Hello, and welcome to our virtual autism panel. We're excited to have you joining us this evening, and happy Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. So April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, and it's an important month because there is still, as you'll see in the panel, there's still lots for people to learn about autism. And there's also the importance of promoting autism acceptance. And I know that, we'll talk about this evening about how, how the world of autism research understanding has evolved. And so what started off as April 2nd as World Autism Awareness Day, now there's much more focus on autism acceptance, because it's one thing to be aware that there are lots of people in our community that have autism. It's another thing to be inclusive and to promote that acceptance. So again, thank you for joining us. So what we have this evening is we have 5 panelists, and they're going to be answering questions that were submitted by members of our Autism Services community. So they submitted those questions in advance, and the panelists are going to be, various panelists are going to be answering questions. So before we start, though, I want to let you know, as this is just one of the events that we're doing for this month, wanted to let you know that we have a window walk that is happening throughout the month, and that is where people can decorate their windows to show their support of autism and to celebrate autism, and that's running throughout the month. And then from April 23rd to 29th, we are hosting a virtual walk for autism. And so because we're still in a pandemic, last year we did this, where we just invited families to get out in their communities, get out and walk. Hopefully by the end of April, we are going to have beautiful spring weather, and everybody will want to get outside and walk around in their communities, and everyone's going to have a Celebrate Autism t-shirt. And we're just hoping that this is a way for families and individuals to get out in the communities and to spark those conversations about, well, why are you wearing an autism t-shirt, and why is it that you're supporting this? So that is running at the end of this month. And if you are looking for more information, you can go to our website, autismservices.ca, and there's a link at the top, Learn More About Autism Month, and that'll take you straight to it. So, before we head into introducing our panelists, one of the things I just wanted to mention is just some of the themes as we were talking about the questions that came through, and I think capacity is one of those themes that's coming out. There are more and more people being diagnosed with autism, and there's more adults being diagnosed with autism, and so the need to support these people is growing and growing, and so you'll hear about that. So I am happy to introduce our panelists. So we have Janet Sibelius. Janet she's a member of Autism Services of our community, and she's an autistic mom, and she has 2 adult autistic sons. She has other members of her family who are also on the spectrum, including her sister and 2 cousins. And Janet was diagnosed at 50 as being on the autism spectrum. And so we'll have her share more of her story later on. She has helped in the past to advocate and fundraise for autism needs, and she was on the board of directors for Autism Services a number of years ago. And on top of all that, Janet is an accomplished and award-winning artist. So thank you, Janet, for being here today. We really appreciate it. Lana Capelli is our Director of Adult Support Programs, and she has been with us the longest. Glenda has worked at Autism Services for 22 years. She started as a manager in one of our group homes, and moved into her current role as Director of Adult Support Programs 12 years ago. Glenda has had a number of different experiences. She worked her first year in the human services field in a vocational setting in rural Saskatchewan. During her first few years with Autism Services, she worked casual and part-time in the autism preschool at the Kinsman Children's Center. And previous to working at Autism Services, she worked in the Greater Vancouver area, first on the front line in group homes for 5 years, and then 5 years in management. Glenda is from small town Saskatchewan and has attended Saskatoon Business College and Sask Polytechnic. Over the years, she has taken various courses and training to help her in her work, to learn more about autism and to develop her leadership skills. Glenda is also an alumni of Leadership Saskatoon. And Glenda has been all over the place. I had no idea until she sent me her bio. She's traveled throughout Canada, the United States, and Western Europe, as well as West Africa, where she met her husband. Glenda has lived in Edmonton and Helsinki, in addition to her years in Vancouver. But Saskatoon is now her home, and she lives here with her husband and son. Glenda values the relationships she has with family, friends, and coworkers, and all people who she's had the privilege to meet. Next, we have Alex Scott, who is our Director of Family Programs. He began work with the agency over 10 years ago as a behavior therapist in the Autism Intervention Program and ABA Little Tots program, and eventually accepted a managerial role as Family Programs Coordinator before eventually moving up to a director position. He always believes in capitalizing on opportunity when it is presented. He's been married to his wife, Robin, since 2014, and they have 2 boys, Holden, who is 2.5 years, and Hunter, who was just born on February 24th of this year. They bought a house during COVID and look forward to being able to travel again. Alex enjoys socializing with his buddies, nerding out to the Lord of the Rings. I also love Lord of the Rings. Buying digital sports collectibles and reading books with his hilariously small amount of time he has to himself. So thank you, Alex, for being part. Desiree Witten is our Director of ABA Little Tots, and she is a board certified behavior analyst and the director of the ABA Little Tots program. She's worked at Autism Services for 7 years, and she took her undergraduate degree in communication disorders, and she has a master's of science in applied behavioral analysis and autism. So welcome, Desiree. Olivia O'Neill is our interim director of the Autism Intervention Program, or AIP as we call it. Olivia has a master's degree in psychology and has worked in a variety of roles at Autism Services over the past 6 years as a behavior therapist, autism consultant, counselor, and manager of the mental health and wellness team. Olivia has had the opportunity to work with autistic children, youth, and adults and their family members, and she's very excited to be part of the panel discussion this evening. So welcome, everyone. So we will launch right into the questions. And the first question is actually a question I'm going to answer because I'm the development coordinator. I actually forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Carol Teeby. I am the development coordinator at Autism Services. And I have been working for Autism Services for probably about 8 years. I started my work as being hired to manage the first Gatsby Night event. And the role has just grown from there. I took over the rest of the fundraising events throughout the year. And then that just moved into more marketing work, public relations, and fundraising. So my role has definitely grown, and I've learned a lot. I am a parent of a child with autism. He's an adult now, but I definitely have a personal investment in Autism Services, and I definitely have experienced and know the value for myself in terms of how Autism Services supports families and individuals with autism. So the first question submitted by one of our members this evening is, will Autism Services consider updating their logo to be more inclusive of the autistic community? I'm happy to say yes. And it's definitely on our board of directors radar. Our executive director is aware that when we created our logo, and that was developed before I even started with Autism Services, the puzzle piece had a different connotation than it has now. And we recognize that the puzzle piece for a number of members of our autism community and those who are autistic view that negatively, and it's got connections and associated to some things that have been quite negative in the autism community. And so we know that unfortunately now the puzzle piece is becoming a bit of a barrier, and we certainly don't want that to be. Autism Services is very inclusive in terms of our approach and supporting families and individuals. And we're very client-centered. We are looking at, how best can we support the people in our community. And we've been in a pandemic for 2 years. And unfortunately, that really has impacted our capacity. When we look at rebranding, we want to do it well. And so we need to take time to talk to our stakeholders and talk to the people in our autism community and go through a very intentional process so that when we rebrand, what we rebrand is representative of who we are as Autism Services. And so we know that this is definitely something that we need to look at, and that this needs to happen. We just unfortunately haven't been able to devote any resources to that in the last 2 years. It has been quite challenging with how restrictions and different protocols have shifted and changed, and how the pandemic has affected everything. And so unfortunately, we just haven't been able to do that. But we definitely know, we've heard from various people. And so my answer is yes, and I can't tell you when, but we definitely want to go through a good, robust process to do it right. So next, I actually invite Janet to share a bit of her story. So as I mentioned in her bio, Janet has 2 sons with autism, and Janet was diagnosed with autism as an adult. So Janet, could you talk about, first of all, could you talk about your experience of what it was like going through the process of getting a diagnosis for your sons? They're both adults now, so it was a number of years ago. So I imagine even how things happened back then, it's different than how that process happens now. And then if you could talk about what it was like for you to receive your diagnosis and what prompted you to pursue that. Oh, you're muted. Hang on.
There we go. Thank you for having me. I think for my sons, even for their generation, even though it's just one generation back, doesn't seem like that long, but in the way autism moves and what we learn, it's a whole lifetime. And when they were little, my oldest son wasn't speaking, so they sent him to university where they have a class that helps children learn to speak, but it still wasn't helping him. So they sent him over to, they have a Brunskill, they have a oh, hello. They have a like a school over at Brunskill there where they can help diagnose children. And so Brian was diagnosed when he was a preschooler. And then they said he had autism. But at the time, I really didn't know what that meant. I mean, they say your child has autism, and I don't even think it was a lifetime ago. They weren't even, it was just autism. And I had to learn how with Brian. And eventually Alexander got older and he exhibited some of the same things as Brian. So I had took him there and I said, I think he's autistic as well. And Dr. Stryland, who is the doctor there, she said, I agree with you on that. And they gave him a diagnosis as well, even though they're two separate ways their life has autism. They're both autistic and they're awesome is all I can say. I just am so proud of them. They overcame a lot of obstacles without actual, they didn't have access to a lot of services in the schools and stuff, but that's the way it was for the funding at the time. And I'm glad always to see extra funding for parents because it's such a crucial time in their lives. And so I guess as a basically, and then I just raised them and, they raised, raised me and we worked it out all together and they're out on their own, living their life now. And so I'm thought, well, I act a lot like they do in a lot of ways. So I went to there's a couple of psychologists here in Saskatoon that work with adults. So I went and spoke with one of them and she agreed to me because she said, well, seeing as your family history and stuff, because having adults have a diagnosis is still, especially at my age, is still relatively, it's new and it's not new, but there's a lot of learning to do about people going into their senior years with autism and giving us a diagnosis later in life rather than early at life. But it didn't change anything, but it answered a lot is all I can say.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I remember talking to you about you were sharing with me a little while ago about how it answered a lot. Can you talk a little bit more about what did it answer for you? Like, what were the light bulb moments for you when you got that diagnosis?
Well, it kind of was kind of a what do you call it? It's like, yes, I know where I belong now. I have a I have a place. I have a like a community, and it just kind of instead of being, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I mean, we've grown enough that it's like I was glad to have that diagnosis because it really helped. Like it was something where I knew I had a community of people. I had other people who were on the spectrum. You know what I mean? Like it just gave me a place to be, and it helped me to know where to go look for resources. And it just was just kind of like closure to all these years of, well, why when you're young and things happen and you don't know why you feel different and all these questions that you have, but I didn't really have time to answer them as a single parent raising two autistic boys because their needs came first. But after they were grown and left home, that's when I had time to go, and I just wanted to get it settled one way or the other, right? To talk to somebody and have that um yes, that's where you are, that's where you belong. And so I it's a real it's a good thing, it's not like a lot of, there was a time where it was like, oh my god, this is terrible, but it's like, no, it's not terrible. It's really not. It's kind of, it gives you a place, it gives you a community. You can explore who you are further once you have your diagnosis, right? You can explore who you are as an autistic person, as a person on the spectrum, and where you fit on that spectrum. Each journey is separate. So that saying is always my favorite. Once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, right? And so I'm content who I am as that autistic person. And I'm proud of my boys who they are as they're autistic persons on the spectrum. And I'm just really proud of them. How, yeah, sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, because I think we definitely see it that there's more people who, as adults, you know, they have these little niggles and these questions like, huh, I wonder if, you know, there's something different. So thank you for sharing your experience. It's good. It's helpful.
Thank you.
So I'm going to actually call on Olivia and Desiree as our definitely Olivia and Desiree are, you know, overseeing autism consultants and the direct therapies. And so question that was put to us, there's kind of two parts to this, and maybe I'll ask both questions, and then Olivia and Desiree, I'll have you kind of speak to them. So can you speak to the terms used when referring to autism? So terms such as low functioning, high functioning, extreme, mild, Asperger's. Is there a level of autism that a person has in terms of severity? And does an autism diagnosis explain these differences? And how can this inform like therapy and treatment options? If you can speak to that, that would be great.
Sure. I think this is a really good question, and I'm glad that somebody asked this question and sent it in to us to talk about this evening. So the autism spectrum, it's not linear, so there isn't more mild or severe forms of autism. And the terms high functioning, low functioning, they're not very helpful, right? We try and look more at what are the individual's unique needs to kind of decide on what supports they might need. So often we would say, instead of high functioning, we might say they might need a lower level of support. For those that people may have said in the past low functioning, we prefer to use the term like higher level of support needs. And yeah, we recognize too, like what Janet said, that the autism spectrum is very diverse, that once you've met one person on the autism spectrum, you've met one person on the spectrum, and that people's needs, they fluctuate and change all the time, like sometimes depending on what environment they are in, right? So like, for example, a child might do really well if they're in a structured classroom and they might be very regulated there, but then if they're in a really loud grocery store, they might need a different level of support. So often, yeah, for an autistic person, they're how they're functioning and their abilities to function can change and fluctuate often, and they may need a different level of support throughout the day, but also throughout their life and throughout the stages of their life. So we really look at the person as an individual and guide decisions on what therapies they might want to participate in themselves, or what therapies a parent might want their child to participate in. It would all be individualized.
And then just to add to what Olivia said, the types of programs are all made individually for each child, so it doesn't really matter what level is written on the diagnosis. I always want to meet the child and family where they're at, and then work on things that they need more assistance with, and then also work on things that they already know how to do and like to do as well. I had watched a video by Dr. Mary Barbera and Dr. Carrie Magro, and he actually has autism. And he described, instead of like low functioning, high functioning, he described it more as a color wheel. So I really liked his description of the color wheel, looking at different characteristics and strengths that are inside each individual.
Thanks, Olivia and Desiree. So, okay, I'm going to ask a further question because, like I had mentioned, my son is an adult now. So, you know, he didn't get diagnosed recently either. So, and you know, this idea of the color wheel, that was not explained to me when we were going through the diagnosis of my son. So so an autism diagnosis sounds a bit complicated. Like, it's not like somebody breaks their arm and now we just have to set it in a cast and carry on. So can you speak more in terms of how, like when you're meeting with the families and with the children, how do you act, what are you looking for to know what levels of support the children are going to need?
A lot of the time it's asking the right questions. So asking the parent and then the child or youth themselves, or if it's an adult on the spectrum, asking them what they feel they need support with, right? What are some challenges they might be facing? Are there areas that we can help them in? And also there are lots of autistic people that don't need a whole lot of support, that are able to function very well and that don't need a lot of, be it therapies, and it might change, as I said earlier, kind of throughout their life. So we often share what we are able to support with and put things kind of out to families, and then they're able to take in that information and then let us know what they think will be a good fit for them. But sometimes it can be doing more formal assessments too, depending on for our program, depending how old the child is and what they're going to participate in. More formal assessments can give good information too on the areas that they might need more support or skill building in.
We do the same with assessments, as well as just ask different questions of different domains. So like self-help skills, like eating, sleeping, imitation, social skills, play skills, language, all the different areas, and then assess from there.
That sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, I think as a parent, we often don't know what we don't know. So it's good that you know what questions to ask, because, a parent might just not necessarily know where to start if this is brand new to them. So thank you. And I'm actually going to ask Glenda to jump in here a little bit too, because as I mentioned, when my son received his diagnosis, I mean, the idea of the color wheel, which makes sense, or even the idea of like autism spectrum, that wasn't even, autism spectrum disorder was not even a disorder when my son was diagnosed. So Glenda, as you've definitely been in the world of autism for a long time, I'd like you to speak about how it's definitely, the language is evolving and understanding is evolving. And so, yeah, there's terms like high functioning, low functioning that have been used in the past. They're not really used so much anymore. But if you can talk about how the language has shifted, that would be great.
Right. Having been working in the field for many years, I've definitely seen how the language does evolve and change. It's easy to get into a habit of using certain terminology, even though it might be obsolete. And we know that those labels don't describe people. You can't use one label and totally understand any person. So it's, like I said, when it does become a habit, it's hard to break that. So it can cause some confusion for people when they hear others talking about different levels. What I've seen is that some of those labels are used when talking about funding, just because they will fund people according to their needs. And so, for example, if someone has high support needs or low support needs, they'll have a certain type of funding. And then also if they could have complex needs as well. So that would give them some extra funding to get the support that they need, or some equipment or whatever that is.
Thanks, Glenda. Yeah, so I think, yeah, just being, if people are cognizant that there's definitely been a lot of shift in terms of the language, and even, myself as I've been, doing, putting together materials and such for Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, there's things I've run into watching videos that I didn't even know of. And so, yeah, parents and people can hear different things, and it's because it's just the language is evolving so much. So thank you. The next question that we have is around schools, and a lot of the a lot of the clients we support are school age children. And so one of our members asked, in light of the fact that many educators and school administrators seem to have a limited understanding of autism, what can parents do to work with schools and advocate for their child? So I'll ask whoever would like to jump in to talk about that.
I can go. So I think it's very important to create a relationship with the teacher at the beginning of the school year to help them assist with learning about your child. And then also if things come up later in the school year that you're having questions about, you'll feel more comfortable talking with them. Providing teachers with outside resources. So it could be like strategies written up by other schools online, could be a book about autism, different websites. There are some online courses through the University of New Brunswick, or there's also like free training in ABA, for example, online that teachers or parents could take if they would like. Providing the teachers with reports from outside professionals, and then also providing them with outside professionals' contact information so that they are able to collaborate. So for example, the kids in our program, I'll often attend the IIP meetings or go in to help, me or my senior therapist will go in to help with the transition into kindergarten. It helps because we've already had the kids with us for 1 to 2 years already before going into kindergarten, so we know what strategies will work well for them. And then also connecting with other parents who have children with autism in the school system and talking to them about their experiences and what helped them and how they got through with advocating for their child.
Just to add to what you said as well, Desiree, our autism intervention program and our mental health and wellness team, our staff often support as well at that school level. So if it's providing consultation to the school team, supporting families and being that advocate for the family and the individual on the spectrum at those school meetings. And I think as well, like the schools, they're often doing the best that they can with the limited resources that they often have. So I know often we hear from parents, they feel their child may not be getting the support they need at school, or that the resources aren't always there. And sometimes that is the reality. But there can be other ways that we can collaborate and support with that ASD education. So if I'd encourage families to reach out to their consultant or whoever they're connected with at Autism Services if they need support with that. We're always open to helping with that education piece and collaborating with the school teams as well.
Thanks, Olivia and Desiree. And I think when we were chatting about this before, now I know that the public school system definitely has an their own autism consultant. And again, it sounds like they're very overloaded as well. But there is that resource there in the public school system. Is that resource there in the Catholic school system as well?
I believe there are like special education supports and coordinators in all the school divisions. It may not be kind of ASD specific in their title, but there should be the equivalent supports there in the other school divisions as well. Yeah, the resource teacher I find is always a really good support person for the family to connect with. And there's typically a resource teacher. They have different titles I find between the school divisions, but they're often a good person to connect with as well.
That's great. And even just knowing that, if someone's member of Autism Services, they've got a consultant, they can request that consultant be at the school meetings when they're doing the specialized program plans and those sorts of things, to know that they can specifically ask for that, right? That's great. Good. Yes. And I think what you touched on about the, unfortunately, capacity at schools there's a huge challenge there, just like we're experiencing, because there's so many more kids being diagnosed with autism. And so, often school teachers, administrators, they're doing the best that they can. But I understand from a parent point of view that it can be frustrating. And so knowing that, at least knowing what resources are out there that parents can access, I think is a huge help. And Desiree, I'm wondering, would you be able to send me any links that I could include with this video to those outside resources that you said that you could recommend to schools or teachers to learn more?
Yeah.
That would be great. I think as much as we can arm parents with the resources that they can point people to and for themselves as well. I mean, that's going to go a long way. So thanks. So, and I guess one other thing I would say too is, having all these resources and knowing what supports are available is huge. And as a parent, knowing that you can absolutely advocate for your child in the school system and to trust yourself, your child. Like Desiree said, when you are helping transition a child, into kindergarten, you've already been working with those little tots. And so, things that the information that you provide to the schools. And I believe parents can do that too. And just know that you absolutely can advocate for your child as well. And you can let the schools know, what you know about your child and what those challenges are going to be. So the next question is a question around as autistic people get older. So what can be done to link companies with autistic adults who would be good employees for their business needs? And I know we talked about this as a group, and this isn't an area that we specifically focus on at Autism Services, but there are options out there. So if someone could speak to that, that would be great.
The idea of supported employment has been on the table from time to time, and of course we're always open to new ideas, but something this specific would take a new source of funding for us to be able to provide that service. But there are other agencies that do provide matching employers with people, and just to name a few, Partners in Employment, Ready, Willing, and Able. So, I would guess that those people have gotten funding through grants or from the government to run the programs that they have. Our current day program is funded through the government, but the funding is more focused on individuals' needs. So each participant has a person-centered plan, and they might have a goal for employment, and that would be something we would support them with. But many of them would have goals just for building skills or something, and a volunteer placement might be better for them. So in the past, or pre-pandemic, I guess, we had a group of people going to Ronald McDonald House to do recycling, and currently we have one paid contract where we have a group going to Sass Poly to do recycling. The other agencies in the community do the same type of work. So Cosmo, for example, has a group that was coming to Autism Services, to our office, to do some cleaning. And that group, I guess, would be coming to us as employees. So in that case, Autism Services is the employer.
Thanks, Glenda. Can you tell me more about, how did you set up the volunteer work with Ronald McDonald House, and then now, the work that's being done at Sass Polytech? Was it that you approached these organizations, or how did you even know, to connect with them?
Typically, it would be the managers that work under me who make those connections. So it could be either way. I think, with Sass Poly, it was someone who knew the manager who contacted us. In the other situation with Ronald McDonald House, I believe it was us that contacted them to see if there was something that our people in our programs could volunteer for. So
So it's definitely sounds like relationship building. Where those relationships are, then that's how you can kind of get the ball rolling with some of these. Yeah, thank you. So, and I'm going to ask Alex to jump in a bit too. So, as we're, even though we don't have a specific program that is intentionally connecting, connecting individuals with businesses, and Glenda, you mentioned a couple of those organizations, and another one that I know of, which is a program, but also preps people for working in the workforce and gives them experiences. Employment Works. My son went through that, so that is for autistic adults to do the skills building for employment, and they actually have work placements where they go to. So there are some programs in the community that are doing this, but I would say that there's always room for growth, and I think as there's more awareness in the community, that I just would be surprised if we don't see that increasing. And I think that there are more and more organizations that are open to working with those with autism. So Alex, tell us about family programs, because you're like we mentioned in your bio, you're always looking for an opportunity. And I definitely have seen how family programs, how those programs have expanded, and there's been new partnerships built with organizations. And I'm curious to know sort of how those partnerships came about, and how maybe that's changed from when, way back when we were first trying to find venues for recreational programs versus what it's like now.
For sure. Thanks, Carol. We've come a long way in the last 10 years that I've been with Autism Services, that's for sure. We're always looking for partnerships. That's kind of vital to our specific department, because if we don't have community partners, then we're not really being able to effectively deliver the recreational programs that we've been working on for so many years. So I'm always itching to collaborate with new community members, because 10 years ago, we didn't really have that opportunity. We were very small. We only had maybe 3 or 4 partnerships at the time, and autism was quite new and still a bit of a developing disorder, so to speak. So as time went on and we got a bit more funding available and things of that nature, I think it was just a matter of creating that awareness piece, sometimes just picking up the phone and reaching out to these businesses that maybe were never thought of before. And as time progresses and that awareness is out there, we've actually found that lately members and community partners are actually coming to us now, which is a really positive thing in my mind, because they have that awareness piece now, and they know that autism is growing, that there's a lot of demand for services, and it's good optics out in the community too. It's not just us doing all the legwork. It's now a form of inclusivity that perhaps places like any community venues and rec programming really that haven't thought about autism before. So we've come a long way. We're still growing. I'm still reaching out. I'm still having Zoom meetings with various people who are just sort of touching the surface, but I'm excited to see where that goes. And I think just building capacity and increasing that awareness across Saskatoon is going to be vital to our growth.
That's great. So I'm curious to know, when you are reaching out to an organization, what kind of questions are they asking? If you're approaching them saying, we would like to bring in a group of autistic children or youth to, participate in the program or the facilities that they have, what kind of questions do they have for you?
Generally, the first question is, what sort of programs are you doing and how does it relate to our own industry? And if there's any, I think the word is synergy that is often used out there. if there's any of that that exists, how can we cross them together and collaborate where we can build a more inclusive partnership? I actually just took a Zoom call today with Good Life Kids Foundation representative out in Toronto, who is running a fitness-oriented virtual program for several different kids. And now they realized, well, maybe we need to get autism industries involved here and just increase that inclusivity a bit more. So it was a very positive conversation. And I think that's just another thing to grow upon as the next few months go forward, and see what that looks like when the school season starts. And yeah, if we can just keep offering these things to the community, it's just going to make autism less exclusive and more just broad, where, hey, I have autism, but I'm in this program, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be so generalized to one specific group anymore.
It's good. Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like there's more of an intentionality with organizations that are looking at how can they make what they offer more inclusive in the community, which I've definitely seen with different organizations that even that I've been in contact with before the pandemic, looking at even like sensory friendly shopping at the grocery store, or offering something at like Nutrient Wonder Hub, doing sensory friendly, or movie theaters. So it definitely seems like there's more awareness, and organizations are now looking for ways that they can make what they have more inclusive. So I think touching on that, and back to the other question about the businesses, I think that that's just going to grow. But I think it is about relationships. I mean, Alex, you spoke to that too. It's the building the relationships, different organizations getting to know, know those with autism, knowing Autism Services. And it's the word autism is not so much of a barrier anymore. I'm curious, when like 10 years ago, because the understanding around autism was definitely different, definitely not as much known in the community. Were there organizations that were hesitant, or weren't sure whether they wanted to partner with us because they didn't know what is it going to be like with autistic kids in their facility?
Yeah, I think there was. Organizations who didn't have a lot of awareness and knowledge about autism back in the day, so to speak, they were hesitant because, I mean, they still have a business to run as well. And if anything happens that is unexpected, maybe damage to property, maybe there's a behavior there that might make other people feel uncomfortable. I feel like those were things that concerned businesses back then, because it was such a different disorder from 10 years ago to what it is today. And there wasn't a lot of resources out there. There wasn't a lot of community presentations out in the public. And I think that just kind of made people a little more skittish than perhaps they should have been. I understand the business angle because we run a business ourselves, but I think perhaps looking back on that, a lot of these businesses probably just wished to have a conversation with an employee to get that awareness rather than just making that quick snap judgment. So as a community, we've all come a long way. I think we've really done a good job building Autism Awareness Month to what it's become. And I think all of our workers are dedicated, and they're not just offering a service, they're out in the community making it known that they're offering a service. And I think that's super important to growing our agency as a whole.
Yeah, that's great. And for family programs, I mean, we offer, not only is it, recreational programs, swimming lessons or, fun in the gym or bowling or those sorts of things. I mean, there's also the therapies, the music, music therapy and art therapy. And so there's therapists that are working directly with our clients, and that's growing the whole awareness piece too. So thank you for sharing. And as you were mentioning it, and it's something that I'm not sure whether people know that we have offered educational sessions in the community, and that we've offered that to various kinds of groups. Olivia, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot because we hadn't really talked about this, but can you, what kind of organizations are we providing some information or education around autism to? It seems like it's quite a variety of different kinds of groups.
Yeah, there has been a variety. So there's been a lot of early childhood educating settings, so daycare settings, preschool settings, and we've educated in classrooms, also to different communities around the province that have reached out. The Health Authority, Sask Polytech, and SciAst. There's been, a variety of different kind of organizations, institutions that have reached out. And for some of them, it's very specific what they want support with. So it might be around classroom supports or supporting preschool age children on the spectrum. Whereas for others, it's more general information on autism. Like, what is autism? What does that look like? How do we support people, our customers or our clients that are on the spectrum? How can we better meet their needs? So we tend to adapt our presentations and the education that we're offering to meet the audience and to meet their needs. And again, we encourage people to reach out if they are wanting more information, education on autism for, be it their workplace, even if it's just for like family members or people in their lives that they think would benefit from to support their child or youth on the spectrum. We're always open to supporting with that and collaborating in different ways, because I think it's really important, as Alex mentioned. I think it impacts our growth as an organization, but also improves the quality of life for all of the clients and families that we support. So the more awareness and acceptance that's out there often leads to more of that appreciation of autism too, which is really important, as we're here to support those people on the spectrum in whatever way we can.
And I know that we or your department offers an autism spectrum disorder information sessions almost, I think, every month, and that's been virtual. So is that something that anyone who was curious to learn more about autism, that they'd be able to register to attend one of those sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do advertise it on our Facebook page. So it's open to individuals that are not yet members or aren't members that are just curious to learn more about autism and what programs we offer. So it is open to anyone really that wants to participate and learn. Every kind of month or every second month we're offering the session, and we tend to alternate between daytime and evening. So yes, the Facebook page will be a good place for non-members to look, and then typically it's advertised via our newsletter and email to all of our members.
That's great. Thanks so much, Olivia. So that wraps up all the questions that we had for this evening. Really appreciate it, and thankful to the members who did submit their questions, because I'm always curious to know what do the people in our autism community, what questions do they have? What are they wondering about? And they were really good questions. So I'm glad that we could answer some of those. So we are wrapping up our evening. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much to our panelists for answering those questions and providing your knowledge and your expertise around this area. Again, I will just remind or just let everyone know, if you do want to know more about the events that we have going on this month, you go to our website, autismservices.ca. And you can click the link that says Learn More About Autism Month. And like I said, we've got a window walk running. We'll have a virtual walk. And anyone who participates in those walks If you share your photos of your, the windows you've decorated, share photos of, your Autism Walk t-shirt and being out in the community, you'll be entered into draws. So we've had some very generous businesses provide us with prize items. And so there's prizes going to be for the window walk and the virtual walk. And then everyone who has entered those walks is automatically entered to for our grand prize draw, which we're going to hold at the very end of the month. And that prize draw is worth or valued at $500. It includes a night's stay at the Delta downtown Saskatoon. We've got family passes to Apex Trampoline Park, Prairie Jurassic, Clip and Climb, the Backyard, and also some gift certificates for Pokies Pinball. So definitely check us out on our website and our Facebook page, which is Autism Services Saskatoon. And we hope that you will join us for other Autism Awareness Month events. Thank you so much for joining us.